I'm Kemi, creator of Who Are You, a podcast on purpose. I have conversations with people near and far about how they are finding their way, starting with one simple yet complex question: who are you? In these reflection episodes, I share my takeaways as well as my insights on Friday conversations with my guests near and far. In this episode, I am sharing insights on my conversation with visual artist Abi Salami in episode 3. I took a bit of a break, so if you haven't checked out that conversation or you need a refresher, hit pause and listen or watch episode 3 and subscribe to this channel and podcast if you like what you heard. Now, what did y'all think? Well, I had 3 insights from my conversation. The first was about how I see systems playing a significant role in the pursuit of freedom. And when I say systems, I mean personal systems that we create for ourselves. The second insight was about the value in Black folks investing in Black artists. And the final insight is about unpacking depression in African communities. So let's start with the relationship that I have found between systems, personal systems, and its impact on my personal autonomy and freedom. When Abi talked about treating your work as a full-time artist as you would treat a traditional full-time job, in her words, clocking in and clocking out, I thought about my own experience as I've been on this quest to pursue my purpose. So as I mentioned in episode 0, I used to be in a very different mindset as a creative. I embodied many of the stereotypes that have been historically attached to the creative professional. You know, the beautiful mess image of the laissez-faire artist who operates on disorganization and tardiness. But it's charming, right? Yeah, that was somewhat me. I definitely embodied this as my persona as lowercase Kemi. But as I became more mature, I think I definitely had a internal life that I wanted to reflect externally of being organized and having it together. But I definitely had this disorganized side. But I would present myself on the exterior as having it together, being focused, organized, and scheduled, even though I had a hard time with that. Although, you know, in the beginning of any of my endeavors, I was definitely organized and planned, but it would quickly or eventually just fall into disarray. I would lose focus, I would become disinterested, and things would just begin to kind of slowly fall apart from there. The why behind that is a whole other episode. I get into that in episode 0, so if you haven't checked that out, check it out. But at the time, I had taken on various side projects that I thought would lead me to my salvation from what I felt was a soul-crushing 9-to-5 grind. I was wrong. The more I took on, the more disorganized I got, the more chaotic my personal life became, and I refused to stop, assess, and prioritize. Which sounds simple, right? But I realized that there is an emotional connection to changing behavior. That was huge for me because I didn't understand why it was so difficult for me to just get organized and get it together. And what I was missing there was an emotional connection that I had to that behavior. Again, another episode for another day. So fast forwarding, I eventually started to build soft systems that I have integrated into my daily life. I call them soft because they are more like rituals, as they are connected to my spirit. And because my spirit is always changing and evolving with each day, these rituals flow with those changes. So essentially, they are not rigid rules, but flexible routines. One piece of the system is making time. I truly believe that we have the power to make time. And I'm not quite talking about alchemy here, although I do believe our physical existence and our world of relativity does in fact have the power to define and, make time essentially. But what I'm talking about in this case specifically is making time through scheduling. You excited yet? Okay, I know it's boring, I get it. Scheduling is not a sexy word and it's not a sexy action necessarily, but it is effective and it doesn't take a bunch of time to do it. The beauty of scheduling is that you have the power to schedule what you want and what's important to you. Schedule your uninterrupted work time, whether it's 15 minutes or 2 hours or more. Break down your work time to schedule your individual tasks if you want to. Schedule your meditation, schedule your breaks. Heck, schedule your showers if that works for you. You can schedule anything you want, and the format is whatever works for you. Do you prefer a journal, a wall calendar, a single sheet of paper for each day or each block of time? Or do you prefer iCalendar or Google Calendar entries or unstructured? You decide what is important to schedule and how you do it. The point is that we move in systems, whether we like it or not. It is inherent to being alive. As the sun rises and sets, so do we in our movements and behaviors. Why not take ownership of what we do in the time that we have in this body? Recognizing and molding my time to what I need and want it to be has been life-changing for me. And when Abi talks about what it takes to leave a 9-to-5 to be a full-time artist, the same ideas apply. And when Abi talks about what it takes to leave a 9-to-5 to be an artist, the same idea applies. And I love that she mentioned that being an interdisciplinary worker is the foundation of being a self-employed professional. So from marketing to budgeting, your success as an artist is determined by you understanding the significance of the work behind and beyond the art. Whether you decide and have the means to delegate or not, sustaining and thriving as an artist requires an entrepreneurial mindset. And even sustaining and thriving as an employee takes a certain level of entrepreneurial spirit. Okay, so the next great insight that was affirmed for me through my conversation with Abi was the massive value in investing in Black artists. Full stop. Like stocks, art can generally be approached as a long-term investment. There are short-term investors in stocks, and that's a lane on its own, but the overwhelming number of people who invest and see returns from the stock market are long-term investors. When I say long-term, I'm talking at least a year, but ideally 5 to 10 years of holding your investment to allow it to hopefully appreciate over time. Although the art market has its ups and downs, each artwork is unique, which means it will perform uniquely in the market. It's also important to mention that Black artists have historically been left out of the mainstream art industry. Yet in recent years, there has been a rising number of Black artists such as Toyin Odutola and Kehinde Wiley, which I love both of them, and they are breaking art sale records and reaching massive achievements year after year. Now more than ever is a great time to invest in Black artists. So, Black people investing in art by Black artists. Why is this particularly important? I've got 3 reasons for you. The first one is when you invest in Black artists, you invest in yourself. The 2010 National Institutes for Health article titled "The Connection Between Art, Healing, and Public Health" mentions, quote, "There is evidence that engagement with artistic activities, either as an observer of the creative efforts of others or as an initiator of one's own creative efforts, can enhance one's moods, emotions, and other psychological states, as well as have a salient impact on important physiological parameters," end quote. Simply being an observer of art has the ability to increase your well-being. Having art on my walls has consistently presented moments of peace, curiosity, and inspiration for me. Second, investing in Black artists is good business. Investing in art can be very lucrative, and the industry has become more and more profitable over the last 2 decades. But it is important to proceed with caution if buying art for profit. Most importantly, look into art that you like. That is super important. It will make all the difference. You can also get started by talking to experts like your local gallery owners and auction houses such as Sotheby's, Christie's, and Phillips. Also, examine what Black art collectors are investing in, like the Dean Collection, and that's a collection that's owned by producer Swizz Beatz and the R&B singer Alicia Keys. You can find their collection on Instagram. By the way, Instagram is another great way to find Black artists. I found tons of Black artists on Instagram, and I continue to just find more and more. Also, check out some art schools across the country and see if you can find any emerging Black artists currently in school. Start small as far as the investment by investing with emerging artists and also artists with a price point that aligns with your budget. It may be worth partnering with others that you trust to invest in a piece as a collective and draft out a contract to agree on the terms of selling the piece, as well as an agreement on how to split the potential return between each of you. So, when you buy a Black artist's work, it helps to set a standard for the value of their work. And if in 3 to 10 years or more down the line, you decide to offer the piece in a private sale or in an auction, and the work goes for more than your original purchase price, this will be vital in raising the value of the artist's overall work. You benefit and they do. And finally, buying Black is a vote for Black Lives Mattering. I cannot stress this enough. There are nearly 50 million Black people in the United States, and we command a buying power of over $1 trillion every year. It's probably more than that, but that's what the research says, according to the marketing research firm Nielsen. Buying products, services, and assets like art from Black owners and creators has what is called a double duty dollar effect. The term double duty dollar was coined by professor and civil rights activist Gordon B. Hancock in the early 20th century. The term expressed the concept of encouraged spending within Black communities, which would be of benefit to the buyer who receives the goods or services, as well as to the benefit of the Black supplier of the goods or services. This creates an ecosystem of investment, employment, and wealth generation within our communities, essentially self-sustaining microeconomies. And my final insight: unpacking depression in African cultures and communities. There's a lot to unpack, and I could start an entire podcast, separate podcast from all that baggage, but I am so glad Abi and I got to touch on this topic. Like the ancestral trauma that my African American kinfolk faced by way of slavery, Jim Crow, and systemic racism, many African people that I know face a multitude of trauma that has opened the door to depression for many of us. The interesting thing is many African people hold a cultural and spiritual competency through our ancestral ways of life that can help us cope and potentially heal from a lot of this trauma. But for a myriad of reasons, that hasn't really been embraced on a large scale. As our African American cousins, we too face the trauma of colonization and toxic patriarchy that has stifled our collective development. This has bred a culture of emotional immaturity and avoidance. Many Africans I know, including myself, are not entirely comfortable with opening up about our personal struggles with mental illness, mental health on the level that may be necessary for healing. But I do find solace in the fact that Black folks are continuing to develop a language around mental health. Don't get this wrong. Black people have been talking about mental health. It might have been a smaller sect than there is now. Now it's just starting to maybe reach the mainstream. But the Black communities that I have been in, those folks have definitely been talking about and unpacking mental health and what it means in our daily lives and what it means to us as a collective. And in recent years, it has, like I mentioned, become a topic of discussion for many more in the mainstream in particular. But I do look forward to unpacking some of this with future guests in coming episodes. So thank you, Abi, for adding your voice to the conversation. My next guest is creative leader Delaney West. Hey, that rhymed. That episode drops today, Friday, October 16th. That should be happening 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So check that out. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the podcast. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts. Episodes drop every Monday and Friday. You can get early access by joining the email list at waypodcast.com. That's WAY podcast.com. WAY is the acronym for Who Are You? Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to see and hear the conversations. And for your listen-only pleasure, you can subscribe to the Who Are You podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're like me and want to cut to the chase, I made it easy for you with timestamps in the description of every YouTube episode and in the show notes in the audio episodes. Lastly, if you have questions, I may have answers. Leave a comment on YouTube or email me at podcastwhoareyou, all one phrase, podcastwhoareyou@gmail.com. I'm Kemi, signing off.